good up to a point, but then it gets really hard and confusing for me. So, but I'm kind of like what they say. I know enough to be dangerous. High school relationships.
High school
like ChatGPT and AI to help me
Oh
program.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Back in the day, they used to teach.
Hello. Hi there, and welcome, Mr. Simpson,
Kia ora.
to the Open Book podcast.
Oh, nice.
So, the podcast where we're gonna dive into the real life experiences of teachers from Waiheke High School, and I'm your host Cole, alongside Tola.
Today we have a special episode where we'll be talking to an amazing teacher
Yep.
who will be sharing his stories from his life experiences outside of school.
Oh, outside school.
Yep.
Outside.
Okay.
But also, in school as well.
Yeah.
As Cole has already said, our guest is Mr. Simpson,
Yeah.
an English teacher with 10 years of experience.
10 years.
I'd like to welcome you to the show with open arms,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Simpson.
Mr. Simpson,
Yo.
we often hear about teachers' lives inside the classroom.
Teachers
But,
live.
but today, we want to focus on what happens outside of it. Can you tell us about some of your interests and hobbies when
outside
you're
of
not
the
teaching?
Oh yeah. So I've got quite a few interests and hobbies. One of them is for many years now I've been a trustee for Waiheke Radio, and I
Okay.
helped start Waiheke Radio. And Waiheke Radio is a community radio station up in Artworks in Oneroa. It's kind of behind. It's in the back, in that like back car park. There's that house
Yeah.
there, and that's Waiheke Radio. And so that's been one of the. What else do I do? I also, a lot of you guys will know that like I study Te Reo Māori, and I have for many years, for about 7 or 8 years.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So I do spend quite a bit of time either taking classes or just sort of studying myself. Like I read books in Te Reo Māori, and I kind of study Te Reo, and I do a lot of stuff around there. And then also, funnily enough, lately I've been doing quite a bit of programming.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah, sort of like kind of inspired from our class.
So, I believe you also said that you used to do some programming when you were a bit younger. In your,
Yeah,
your
yeah, I
younger
mean,
years.
I have always kind of dabbled in. The thing is, I'm not very good.
Yeah.
I kind of like, I'm sort of good up to a point, but then it gets really hard and confusing for me. So, but I'm kind of like what they say. I know enough to be dangerous,
Yeah.
and so I can realize ideas and stuff like that. And lately, what's been really helping me out, I've been doing a lot of programming, and I'm using like ChatGPT and AI to help me
Oh,
program.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
So it's still quite labor intensive. Like I have to know enough to like see what's going wrong, and I have to troubleshoot, and I have to debug and do all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of a nice balance for me because the AI can sort of get like a project started, and then I can kind of tweak it till I get get what I need. So it's kind of like almost like back in the day they used to teach programming where you sat with another person. It's called like pair programming.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of idea that two people looking at it, and two people would sit in front of one computer. And so the AI is a little bit like that. Like it helps me, realize things that that I might not have been able to do, but it still requires some stuff. So I've been doing a bit of that. And then depending on the season, I also do artworks as well.
Okay.
And stuff
Oh,
like
really?
that. So that's kind of
That's pretty cool, man.
that's my outside of
Yeah.
school stuff.
Yeah, outside of school stuff. Okay.
Bringing it back to podcasting,
Yeah.
how did you initially get into this? Did somebody come up to you and present you with the idea, or you figure out on your own?
No, it's funny. Like, when my kids were born, when my son was born, we went to America, and this was like my son's like 20 years old now. So like 20 years ago, we took him to America, and that was the first time I'd ever heard the word podcasting. I was reading something online, and I saw this thing about, wow, people are actually putting like audio files on the internet, and they're starting to kind of do like put radio shows on the internet. And I was doing some work with Waiheke Radio at that time. Waiheke Radio, then it was the radio station. And we were starting to think, okay, how do we move from being like a radio station that's on your car or in your house or whatever to like getting online. So we were starting to do streaming. But it was pretty rudimentary back then. It was pretty hard, and we kind of, and then that was when the podcasting thing, like, just actually the word was just created. Some people were starting to do it, and so I came back. I emailed my friend Chris Walker, and I was like, "Hey, we need to get on this." And so we started kind of doing it at the radio, which was kind of like just taking radio shows and putting them online. And so that was kind of the beginning of it. And then we ran some classes through like Waiheke Adult Learning. We ran a podcasting class to teach people how to do it. A lot of other people get them going. And I know quite a bit about the technology and stuff like that. And so, yeah, and then what I ended up doing is kind of moving it into class, and trying to getting it in my media studies class and getting in a digital technology class. And I think that it's still something that's kind of like growing. Like there's still a lot of space for podcasting because it's actually starting to evolve in like really interesting directions, especially with like AI and stuff like that.
Sounds like this podcast is starting to get a bit boring.
Okay,
because it's enough of the yak.
Enough of the yak.
Let's get some. Let's get true.
You want some juicy
Some
stuff?
juicy-
You know what? We want to dive a
some
little bit
juicy
more
stories.
into your life.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You know, you've taken us through the backstories, through the past. Your beliefs.
I have.
But that's not.
We want to get
what
to
we're
know
trying to
you
get out
on
of
more
here.
of a
Yeah.
personal note.
On a
This
personal note.
podcast.
I don't know about that. Yeah.
This podcast is used to spread information to
Yeah.
get us more connected to our
Tell
teachers.
us about your first high school relationship.
High school relationship.
High school relationship.
I don't actually know if I had a relationship.
Or just
in high school.
not necessarily in
Really?
high school, but in your younger years.
Yeah,
I think
maybe
I was
around
probably in university when I
Yep.
had my first relationship.
like your
Okay.
first serious one.
Yeah. Yeah, first serious one.
How'd that end up?
Tell us about the partner.
The partner. I can't even really remember the names of some of these people.
Oh,
That's
so
a
there's
long
more than
time
one.
ago.
Yeah,
Well,
multiple
I mean, you're in
partners.
university, right? I mean, there's...
Simpson was a player back then.
Well, everyone should be a player in university, perhaps.
Oh, so you
Oh.
condone it. You
Um,
push for the youth to be.
I don't know where you're going with this. Alright.
Well, I mean, you're gonna make a lot of false starts. You
Yeah.
know, I mean,
Okay,
that's
yeah.
just a reality. And
It's just-
I think I had like
some-
a few casual ones.
So let's
and then
just
a few more
say you had
serious
a
ones,
let's just
yeah.
say you had a fair amount of practice.
Before.
Enough practice
Enough
before the real
practice
deal.
Before the real deal. Okay. Okay.
What about you, Cole?
What about me? Oh.
Oh, you're on
We're
our
not-
podcast.
You
I mean,
know,
so
we're not,
we
we're not,
know,
we're not
but-
talking. We're not really
Oh, we're
talking
not
about
talking
me
about
today. But
Okay.
I'm sure Tara wants to share something on that
We
topic.
should actually move on
To on.
here
Yeah.
and
Move
start
move
to,
on.
Okay.
Okay.
Start to go more in depth with some other experiences
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you've had. Have you ever traveled before?
Yeah. I've been quite a few places actually. When I was just when I finished university, I went to a lot of places. So I kind
Have
of
you
like
been like robbed or? Sorry for interrupting you like that, by the way.
no, not robbed.
Like, do you have any crazy stories from like when you've been, traveling? Like, have you been mugged, robbed?
No, not really. I mean, the closest,
us
I mean, the most nervous I've been was once when I got dropped off from a bus into Barcelona,
Barcelona.
which is in Spain, really late. Well, really early in the morning, like 3 in the morning, and there's nobody around in the bus station at 2 or 3 in the morning. And bus stations are often not the most
Safe place.
safe or ideal places to wind up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So
Yeah.
that was a little bit nervous to be like, okay, why am I at this crazy? And Barcelona has a reputation for pickpockets,
Yeah.
So,
heard that.
but I mean, I never really had. I mean, I guess one of the weirdest experiences I had is I was on this. When I did live in England for a while, and we traveled a lot around, and I traveled a lot around Europe. And at one point, I went to. I was in Venice, Italy, with staying with a couple of people that I knew from the United States when I lived there, and. I was with a friend of mine, Matt Schoaf, and he was he'd been going to university as an art historian, And he had this idea that he wanted to go travel from Venice to Croatia, to the capital of Croatia, which is called Zagreb. And he wanted to go there because they had this big collection of what they call Eastern Orthodox art that he wanted to see.
Yeah.
Trouble was is that Croatia was part of Yugoslavia, which was a country back in 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And they were in the middle of a war, like a big, crazy war. And so we were kind of stupid, and we were like, okay, let's go to the war zone. And so we traveled on a train, and we got to Croatia, and they took us. The train stopped in Zagreb, and just waited. That's the name of this capital, and we just waited and waited and waited. They didn't let us off the train, and then these military people came up to us, and they're like, "Hey, come with us." And we're like, "Oh shit, man, maybe we shouldn't have come," you know. And they took us, and they took our passports. We were like, "Oh no, they've taken our passports," and took our passports. So we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. Eventually, they came back with our passports that had this really Mecca sticker visa in it. So we were approved to go in. We were like, "Oh man, okay." So we got in, and we went to we didn't really know where to go. We didn't have a lot of information about Zagreb, so we went to the tourist information center.
Yeah.
And we got in there. We kind of opened the door. There was nobody there, and then eventually these two girls kind of appear, and they're like,
more practice.
What are you doing here? And we're like, "Oh, we've come to visit Croatia." And they're like, "Well, you do know there's a war going on." And we're like, yeah, whatever. So they're like, "Oh, okay," and they kind of gave us some information about about where to go to stay, and we ended up going into this hostel that was filled with military personnel, which was kind of freaky.
That's pretty cool.
You joined?
No, and at one point we did, and we went to. I remember going to the bank. And I had to go to change some money, and I had we didn't have much money. I had I was going to change $40 US.
Oh yeah.
And went into the bank. I changed $40 US, which would be two $20 notes, right?
Yeah.
Went into the bank to change these notes. I came out with this massive, massive wad of money, just huge wad of money. If you can imagine, about a foot deep of money, and I was like, "Matt, we're rich." And we're like, "Oh, yeah, okay." So we went, and I remember going back to our hostel that night. They didn't have coins. They only had notes. And we had a 1 dinar note. And I remember us sitting there with a piece of paper and a pencil trying to figure out how much a 1 dinar note was actually worth. And it was worth 0.0001 of a cent. So we had all this money that was completely worthless. It was literally... the ink was probably worth more on the note than the note was actually worth to trade. So we couldn't find any food, and we ended up going to the university cafeteria. And then we went to this. The reason we went is because Matt wanted to go to this museum. And so we went to this museum to see all this Eastern Orthodox art. And when we got to the museum, it was the same thing. They're like, "Why are you guys here? You do know there's a war going on." And we're like, yeah, but we want to see the art. And the guy was
let's cut to the chase.
The guy was like, all the art, we put all the art away in case we get bombed. And so we did see some art, which was by locals and stuff. But yeah, it was kind of unusual going to a country that's in the middle of a war. It's kind of depressing, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because everyone's kind of depressed during a war.
Yeah.
And you can sort of see it.
I have my friend Nina. She lives in Israel. You might remember Nina.
Nina? Yeah, I think I do.
Yeah, and the little sister Gaia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's still in Israel at the moment. There's just that huge war going on, but she's just living life to the fullest.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because she's in Israel.
drinking.
She's not in Gaza.
Yeah, but stuff is still happening in Israel.
A little bit. I mean, it could happen more because they just killed the
I know,
Iranian,
the Hamas or something.
Yeah, the Hamas leader in Iran.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Iran's like,
Really?
hey. Oh.
Sweet. Okay.
Do we have to cut the whole thing? Are we rolling the whole thing? Okay.
Okay.
Next question.
Next question. So, what's your ideal student?
Ideal student?
Your ideal, what do you like the most?
I like people who, I think for some of the subjects that I teach, I like people who make things. If people make stuff and they're engaged in making the thing at the end, like the podcast.
Yeah.
I like creativity, and I like
Yeah.
people who try and take what we talk about and then turn it into something of their own. Like I don't really like, okay, I've just done this to meet the standard and blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
yeah.
I like it when people go, oh yeah, I can actually make something on my own. So I do value creativity and
Okay.
stuff like that.
So
Yeah.
who is your favorite student?
I don't know if I have a favorite student.
You
gotta
Wait,
pick
I mean,
one.
some of them have already gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the ones in this class?
In this class,
Yeah.
Hammett.
Is Hemet your favorite?
no,
Yeah.
him. It's not my favorite.
What's your favorite color, Mister?
Olive green.
Olive green. That has
I
changed.
realized I'm always wearing olive green.
You are kind of always wearing.
I mean, I
olive
feel like
green.
that's such a like. What are you like? Mid-50s?
Yeah.
Mid-50s. Yeah.
I think that's like a 50.
I feel like most-
guy's
yeah.
color.
Yeah, definitely is.
I
Because my
used to
dad's
be
my
re-
dad's the same. and
I
he's
used to be really
mid-50s,
black
yeah.
and wear black, all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Kind of moody and grays, like we were talking about before.
Oh, yeah, but those aren't colors. Just so we're clear.
Let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining our podcast today. Open Book Podcasts.
I can't read what he's talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Love to have
Appreciate
you
appreciate
here.
you coming onto our show today and taking the time out of your teaching period to.
Yeah, we know you
Assist
really
us with
wanted
this.
to do this. so
have a
thank
good
you.
one,
that
mate.
was
Yeah,
good.
see you later.